Hello resin casters. This short video has some hints for improving the Harbor Freight pressure pot system for resin casting. It's not meant to be a tutorial. There are many of those online, but there are a few ideas in here that hopefully you will find useful. So let's get started. Of course, the first thing is safety. These are high pressure vessels and they can explode. Think about a tire blowing out. Make sure you know and understand these risks and feel comfortable working with pressurized vessels. Do not defeat any of the safety features. Always wear appropriate safety equipment, especially for your eyes. And read the manual for your pressure pot and compressor before you make any changes. This is a top view of my pressure pot after I finished. In the column on the left is the inlet and outlet connection to the compressor and a ball valve. On the right is a gauge and a pressure relief valve, which is a safety feature. Note that there is no regulator. I'll talk more about that in a minute. The column on the left has this hose fitting and the inlet valve. Those are 1/4 inch NPT fittings. The column on the right requires a reducer and then a T so I can connect both the relief valve and the gauge. That is the gauge that came with the Harbor Freight pressure pot, and it seems to work fine. This is a regulator that came with the pot. I decided not to use it when I found it leaked terribly. So I did open it up. There's a rubber diaphragm in there, and I think with a little bit of thought and effort you can probably fix the leaks on there. But the compressor has its own pressure regulator on the output side. You see two gauges on the compressor. The one on the bottom is the tank gauge, and that's typically 125 to 150 psi. But my compressor has a relatively stable output regulator, which is the gauge you see and the handle you see to the right, upper right. And you can see that's set at about 60 psi. I found by being careful, I can set that and it holds that pressure very well, and so I didn't need the regulator on top of the pot. One of the main things to do is stop leaks, and the easy way to do that is to apply Loctite 545 to 7 fittings in my case. This is a thread sealant, and there are 2 places on the column on the left, and there are 5 places on the column of the right. It's easy to see what they are because the red color is pretty obvious. You apply the Loctite to the male threads, tighten everything down, and let it sit and cure for at least 24 hours, and it stops all the leaks. Loctite 545 is not cheap. This is the most expensive thing I did as far as working on this pot. But it was worth it, and you get probably what's close to a lifetime supply of the Loctite that you can use for other things later. So it's definitely worth it. The pot cover has an O-ring seal in it, and I used O-ring silicone grease to grease up that seal and make it leak tight. It's a little hard to see in the picture because it's silicone and it's translucent white against the gray background, so you just can't see it. But it's in there. It's easy to get out with a screwdriver or some slight edged tool. Notice that it's not symmetric. The top and the bottom are different. One's flatter and the other's more round. Make sure you put it back in the way you got it, but thoroughly grease up both sides, the top and the bottom, to make a good seal. You put the top back on the pot and tighten it down and then pressurize it and then listen for leaks. I found the leaks were easy to find. You can hear them. And the Harbor Freight equipment isn't always the most precise machining. So if you find the leak, tighten it down, listen for the leaks. And if there's a leak located between the handles, take the pressure off, open it up, and rotate it until what you thought is the leak is underneath one of the handles. It really was easy to do. I just shifted it a few inches, rotated it a few inches, and tightened it down. The leak went away. So mark that. That's the sweet spot, and you can see the black Sharpie mark on the handle and also on the top of the pot. And it's worked fine every time. I put it right back there, and it solves the problem. Doesn't have anything to do with leaks, but you'll be happier if you grease the threads on the 4 lock handles. I just backed them all the way out, coated them up with ordinary general multi-purpose grease, put them back in there, and it makes it much easier to turn them. The pot, when you're turning the handles, can move, and it's a good idea to stabilize it. I suppose there are other ways to do it, but the simplest way for me was to just go ahead and put an L bracket and bolt it down to the top of the workbench. So a few dollars, a couple of bolts and wing nuts, and that holds it in place just fine when you're tightening down the handles. You may know from other videos that the bottom of the Harbor Freight pot is not flat, it's rounded. It's designed for paint, makes sense. One simple solution is to cut out a 9-inch diameter piece of thick cardboard and set it down in the bottom. That will flatten it out. I came up with a platform. I bought some Farberware plastic cutting board, cut it to fit the 9-inch diameter, and then use a 1/4-20 threaded rod and a handle so that I could avoid reaching in and out of the pot. I set this on where I'm doing the resin casting, put the molds on the platform, and then put them into the pot all at once. So those are some of the changes that I made. The platform is really useful for loading and unloading the sample. And with the other changes I've made, the pot holds pressure overnight. I hope you find some of these changes useful. Thanks for watching.